Welcome to FMA Talk Live. This is your host, Datu Tim, and my phenomenal co-host.
Hey, PG Ties here, everyone. Welcome.
I hope everyone's doing well today.
Yeah.
How was the weekend? Anything crazy?
Nothing crazy. I mean, good Mother's Day stuff, right? So we did a bunch of yard work. I don't know about you.
Yeah. I lived at my school this weekend. My social media company came up Friday, so I did private in the morning, then they were there all day, and then I did training all night. The next day we did the Balintwalk seminar and normal classes, and right after that we filmed the movie, or at least part of the movie. So I'm the head choreographer for Ombus 2. The last one was done prior to COVID. So this one's a sci-fi flick, and it's all blue screen. So Saturday I got there at 9:30 in the morning. And I got home at 1 in the morning.
Okay.
So it had some little hiccups with wardrobe, and guys took good instruction from me. We did two. I was actually surprised. We only did two rehearsals. Not even a dress rehearsal. And things worked out pretty good. I mean, some things, hey, let's do it from this angle instead. Let's do it from that angle. And
sure.
Make
it easy for the audience to catch.
Yeah, and making the one character Nemesis, which has been in the first one. Nemesis is we have to make him look another 1.5 feet taller. So we just did it.
All right.
I almost got in the. I did a couple falls to help people through things, but no official stunt work. So, but hey, this weekend I leave Wednesday for Sacramento. I'll be at the Kovar conference, the Rising Tide conference. So I will be teaching a Arnie section there. So that'll be fun. So anyone on the left coast, I'll be flying into SFO, San Francisco, then driving up to SAC. And then Sunday or Saturday night, I'll be driving, I think, back to SFO area. And then I got a noon flight home on Sunday. But listen, we're gonna hop right into this.
Yeah.
So this is like a kind of a mystery man. Well, not a mystery. It's a guy I've heard his name forever and a day.
Yep.
I don't know much about him, but I know I'm supposed to. He's watched our show. He's made some good comments. I've heard nothing but good things about him, and quite the eclectic background. And promotes a Phil-Am program, Calice Americano. Along with other things that he does, which is cool. So it's not you, Renee. It's not you. And Rich Parsons says hello to us. So
hey, Mr. Rich.
Make sure you welcome our guests here is Bryan Cannata.
All right.
Bryan,
hey, everybody.
Hey, sir.
I'm going to put you in the middle there.
There you go.
Good. You know what? You actually said it the way we like it. Usually I always get, hey, Datu, hey, PG. No, Tim and Ty. That's what we like.
Perfect.
TNT, baby. So, where are you from?
Oh, really proverbially all over the place, but grew up mostly in New Jersey, North Jersey, about 45 minutes away from the George Washington Bridge.
Okay.
Spent a good bit of time in Virginia, good bit of time out in Texas. Just my family moved a lot, so I went wherever they went.
Where in Texas, by the way?
Down somewhere south, close to the border.
Okay.
Yeah, some small little town that I don't really remember.
No worries.
My biggest memories of Texas are Flat and Brown. That's really it. I
was gonna say Brownsville's right down there, so it could have been something like that. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Rich Parsons says hello, and then right here, hello, hi, Bryan, and then of course Renee.
Yeah, Renee.
Hey, good evening, Bryan and Ty, and Tim,
and
Tim, and then he put an "and" because he's in Canada. They don't know how to spell. So, why don't we go back and forth on this? Ty, why don't you start us off?
Sure. Yeah. So that's fine. Yeah. Well, anyway, yeah, pleasure to meet you in face to face, sort of virtually. So that's good. And thanks again. chiming in all the time on the shows and stuff and watching that. I appreciate that a lot. But I want to know. So you mentioned we already introduced you with an eclectic background. I was wondering, first off, so you said where you're from. What got you into where you are now, basically martial arts and everything else that contributes to that?
Like the Grateful Dead, what a long, strange trip it's been. When I was a very young child, I was 7 years old. We had some family issues at that time, and I was one of those kids that acted out. And this was 1977, and my grandparents, who I was living with at the time, enrolled me in the local martial arts school, which was one of Chuck Norris's chain schools back in Virginia Beach. And the whole thing of martial arts instilling discipline and trying to give a kid focus and all of that, they completely bought into it, and signed me up. And it started a lifelong journey in love of the martial arts. I mean, like, one of my favorite jokes is I'm one of the few people that's punched Chuck Norris and lived. So, yeah. But it's after that point, my got back with my parents and all that stuff was settled, and like I said, they moved around. So for most of my teens, I was studying traditional martial arts wherever we were, whatever was close, whatever was local. So sometimes it was a Taekwondo school, sometimes it was a Hapkido school, sometimes it was a Goju-Ryu school. It was just wherever we were, wherever I could go and do martial arts. Didn't really care what it was. And in retrospect, looking back at those formative years in the martial arts, it really started me looking for the universal. I've developed this theory over time that I say that there's one true martial art, and all systems and styles are simply expressions of that one true martial art, dictated through climate, culture, and technology. Because those are a sword only cuts so many ways.
Right.
The human body only moves so many ways.
Sure.
So the things that are effective are going to show up in effective martial arts, and they will be common denominators no matter what you're studying. Everything else is flavoring that comes from, like one of my current fascinations right now is Sicilian knife fighting as a dueling art. And so much of what they do within their dueling art is not really about hitting the other person or cutting them. It's much more about a bravery and machismo display. So you've got all of that going on, as well as putting the pointy end into the other guy. And when you start to deconstruct things and look at martial arts in general, you find those common things. But I'm starting to get off on one of my favorite rants here.
No,
but back to my history.
Around here a lot.
So eventually, I had to escape New Jersey, join the Army, and did the basic training thing. Did my AIT, got to my first duty station. And you all right, Datu?
Yeah, it's Tim. Remember Tim? I got a combination of getting over a cold and then all the pollen in the air doesn't help.
Okay. So it is a Friday night. I'm E1, nothing private, and which means I have absolutely no money to go out and get in any trouble whatsoever. So I'm just hanging out in the barracks, and my brand new roommate reaches under his bed and pulls out a friggin' big duffel bag, old like Vietnam era duffel bag. And he's going through it, and I'm just sitting there in the chair, drinking an adult beverage, watching this guy starting to pull stuff out from under his bed. And among the bed, he pulls out a from under his bed, he pulls out a full-size medieval shield. And I'm like, what in the hell have I gotten myself into? Right. Who is this guy that I am rooming with? So he tells me about this group that he's part of that does medieval fighting, and I went, oh, sounds kind of interesting, but I'm looking at the gear he's got, and it's much more Mad Max than Sir Lancelot.
Sure,
It's
sure.
like, well, I got nothing better to do. Why don't I go with you? So off we go to this fighter practice, and these guys start pulling out stuff and getting kitted up and everything, and I'm like, just kind of. Then these two guys square up in the middle of his backyard in suburban Georgia. I was actually stationed here for a while.
Okay.
And then before I could blink, the first guy hit the other guy with what you would call an angle one, and I never saw it. I just heard it explode across the yard.
Okay.
I was like, okay, now you've got my attention.
Right.
And
so was that SCA or
yeah,
LARP?
it was SCA. Yeah, it was SCA. I mean,
Okay.
it still is technically a LARP, but I'm not going to quibble over that.
No.
Yeah, the big thing about it though, and is that it really got me into researching historical European martial arts and trying to find a way to figure out what at the time, and this is the late 80s, early 90s, at the time it was a still really organically growing. It had not reached the massive numbers that do it today. So, but what was interesting is that there were regional styles and all of this, and you'd have better fighters that would coach you. And it's a very kind of almost woodshed sort of thing going on there, much like a lot of the old FMA groups where people meet in their backyards and they'd beat the tar out of each other and figure out what works.
Right.
And because of where I live, and I got addicted to this level of extreme hardcore fighting, because unlike so many other LARPs with the foam swords and all of that, these guys were really going at it. I mean, there were safety rules, of course, and there were target zones, but it was the only place, and this was prior to me ever having heard of the Dog Brothers. This was, the only place I had ever seen anybody hit each other that hard, and against 100% resisting opponents. There was like zero compliance because you're trying to win. And it informed a lot of my thinking, but I got involved in it. I became, addicted to it for a lack of a better word. And the local group here was primarily military. So you'd have a lot of guys come, you'd have a lot of guys go. And, the quality of people you had to fight and spar and train with varied greatly. So I was like, I'm going to have to find something else I can do. And that would allow me to do something similar and stay moving on a regular basis. And this eventually, I've kind of jumped forward in time here, but at that point, I was working as a police officer for the city of Augusta. And the defensive tactics instructor, unbeknownst to me at the time, was actually the head of the system that my black belt's from. And when I started looking, I found the school that taught Filipino martial arts. And, look, I grew up in the 80s, so everybody had a ballet song in their back pocket. Right. It was the original fidget spinner.
Right.
And we had heard of it, but, never really experienced it in any of the circles I had been in. And until that point, I was strictly, let's call them classical Asian martial arts as opposed to, Southeast Asian, Indonesian, all that stuff. At that point, I found a school that taught Filipino martial arts. I was like, this is what I'm going to do. It's close enough. I can probably pick up a couple of cool tricks here and there. And, it keeps me moving, keeps me active. And then once I started getting involved in it, I also fell down that whole Spanish connection rabbit hole which, after years and years of research, I've come to the very solid conclusion of, who knows? Who knows? Maybe it did, maybe it didn't.
Cool.
You know?
Well, let's get caught up on a couple here because some of these guys come and watch. So Jason Arnold, a good friend of ours, not to be confused with the Jason Arnold who's my obsessive Facebook fan club.
Right.
He's Jason from Canada says hello.
Yep.
Renee, by the way, Bryan, the Curtain Awards, those are awesome.
Right.
Bryan gives you a Curtain Award because whose deans are
Yeah. Well, my curtains are much, much better than Dean's.
Yeah. He goes, Matt Jones, FYI, PG Tie looks like Datu Tim without hair. Okay. My waistline is much bigger than his. That's different. Mikey Doyle says hi all, and then Matt Jones, climate culture. Okay. So I used to do SCA as well. I just did the fencing aspect because I was in Filipino martial arts, so I wanted to see whether or not it's Spanish. And of course, the Spaniards had a lot of different peoples who were indentured service, different armies and stuff. But the thing here is, those long weapons definitely affected the tactics that the Filipinos would have to use. And I was like, and I still wonder, like my theory, and I'd like to hear your feedback on this. When it comes to Espada Daga, I think that it was inspired by the Europeans because it's a trademark fighting style.
Mm-hmm.
And Filipinos are ingenious people. They see something and they are very adaptive. They go, hey, if that works for them, why not work for us? And that's where I think our Espada Daga really comes or inspired by.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree 100% that it is, if it is inspired by, it's definitely from the Spanish, because when you compare Spanish fencing to Italian fencing, especially when you're doing, rapier and dagger or Espada Daga, whatever you want to call it, very, very different stances, very, very different movement styles, and very different strategies. So
Eric Harris says hello, by the way.
Oh, hey, Eric.
From Rome, Georgia. Coach Bryan is amazing. There we go. Unsolicited. Wait, or is it? Maybe you have to send them a check now. But usually when they're saying good things about us, we have to send out checks. But
and like I just went over to my hall closet to grab something. So we all are familiar with, and this really ties into the whole Filipino martial arts thing. So where I learned to take the Filipino martial arts I was learning and making it functional was actually within the confines of the SCA. And that system. So I was able to, and I, playing in the SCA, Tim, you understand just how large an organization it is. And when I tell people that I legitimately have thousands upon thousands of full contact sparring matches, I mean it. Yeah, it's just.
So Penzic is an event they do in Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's by Pittsburgh, if I'm not mistaken, or no, the other end of the state.
Slippery Rock, Pennsylvania.
Slippery Rock. So Penzic, they stop counting at 9,999 people who show up to the event, because once you hit 10,000, you need to permit to have a city or a town or whatever the case is. So,
interestingly enough, that number has been passed. They've made agreements. They've had laws changed because the influx of money coming into there on that one weekend.
It's crazy. I mean, and I was driving. So I was a member, but I never really, it was always my martial art career first. So I'm driving back from a seminar and Penzic's going on. So I drove up and I tried to, finagle my way in to see my friend George. Man, they got lockdown. But here's the thing. You can show up butt naked with a couple $100, and in a couple hours, you have everything you need to stay there. They everything. Anything you want, it is there. And the battles, easily, you can have hundreds of people on the battlefield at the same time. So any kind of weapon system you could think of, if you could justify it, like I would fight when I would do my fencing, I would fight with a sarong, and but I had to justify it. It was my flexible weapon. But with the heavy arms, oh my God, you got pikes and sword and shield or double sword. Usually the big one is sword and board, the single shield and the single sword is like the mainstay. But you get people like Chris was fighting with a Madhu and all these other things, and you want to get a gene pool of people who are really trying to hit you. I mean, granted, it's an honor system, so you hit me hard enough, I would say, oh, you got me, and I'd sit down. And you get some people who rhino hide it and say it wasn't hard enough. But the thing here is, it's for the most part, I would say those guys are pretty honorable, and it's not about. I mean, then there's the cosplay portion of it, which I was okay with it. I didn't have a problem with it. It's just when you'd go out to McDonald's afterwards and they were still dressed up like a court jester or whatever, that was a little too much. Yeah. Still, respond to me as Lord, whatever. No, I won't.
No.
But you know what? No. I had a blast while I did it, and I miss those days, and it definitely changed my martial arts.
And just for, I brought these over for the people that, have never seen this. This is your standard, rattan stick, Filipino martial arts, Baston, Alisi, whatever you want to call it. This is a standard SCA stick. It's 1.25 inches to 1.5 inches, 36 inches long, weighs about 1.5 pounds. And this is a single-handed weapon. And this is what I cut my teeth really making those FMA techniques work. And I did it well enough that eventually won me a knighthood. And that may seem kind of nothing to most people, but only 2% of all people that ever authorize actually attain that level. Yeah. And much like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it's performance-based. It's not, you go to so many things. So,
and the cool thing is, here's the problem with Filipino martial artists. Not the art, the people. And people watching us. They all get this perception that it's always a hunk of rattan. And it's like, no. Now, the nice thing about the SCA, you have a weight of weapon, a diameter, which has to be a certain diameter for safety, which brings a lot more weight to the table. That concussive force is nothing like you'll see in any kind of, not even the Dog Brothers. Now, I will say this. With the Dog Brothers, are wearing minimal armor. That being said, as a whole, they're probably not using the same type of weapons that they'd get hit by. And these guys practice this on a regular basis. Like George, Ty, George Harris, one of my black belts. Mm-hmm. He's fought. He's like, yeah, I'll take this. I'll take it. Once you get hit with this, you'll take it. And you can take even the one that Bryan just showed you can take that because it's still rattan. But it reminds us what the weapon is not going to be rattan, and that's the problem with the FMAers and the people that watch us. Well, I'll get hit with that little light stick. It's going to be a 2x4. I mean, go to Home Depot and Lowe's. Where do you find the rattan aisle? It's not there.
No. And that's like, I am more and more moving away from rattan with my students. I still use it because it's a good introduction and it's a good way to get moving. But with the advent of guys like, Volpes that are putting out these incredible polymer trainers, I see no reason why we shouldn't be using sword-shaped objects. Rattan is fun. And, let's face it, there's nothing like sitting there and getting a good smoke going on the sticks, doing Sinwali and, that smell that we all love. And, it's great for sparring because, it hurts. Yeah, you can get broken hands and chipped bones, but it's not going to damage you. It's not going to injure you the way a lot of other stuff will. And, rattan's a good training aid.
Hey, listen, no one had that stuff back when we started.
Right.
What year did you start FMA?
93.
Okay. All right. So I started in 85 at the tail end of it.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't see good aluminum trainers until like 96, 97.
Mm-hmm.
Edges Squared was the guy who
Yep, I have some of his stuff in my training bag.
So do I. Yeah, but I mean the thing is, it was also very expensive. Now, like Keen Edge, Keen knives, and other ones, and everybody is out there to just do some stuff left and right. Let me see here. Let's get caught up a little. Mike Raymond says thoughts on polycarbonate sticks.
They're great for hitting people if you don't want them to get up.
There we go. Okay. And
You
then
know, they're not safe for training, especially the solid ones.
Burgess. That was it. Burgee Blade. Edge
Yeah.
Square. There we go. Bob Burgee. And then of course Darren says hello, and then Renee says number 68. I'm assuming that's an episode. He's always trying to pimp out one of his episodes.
Well, you know.
Ty, can you get that one?
Sure. Let me read it. Let's see. Mikey Doyle says, let's see. I'm a stick maker, weapons maker. I'm an old time wood maker. There's a trick I do for my sticks. I love rattan, but there's so many others beautiful woods to train with. Also, I make some neat wooden trainers. Anyone feel free to message me. I love these guys. Great show.
All right.
Thanks.
Okay.
Cool, yeah. Renee.
Well, you know what? You should probably send us something so we can do a product review. So Renee says porky cards are good. Pokey cards. Pokey card are good, whatever that is. And then we got here rollerettes and keen edge. Okay. Yep. So I mean, listen, when we first started, listen, Bikini Tertia is a bladed system. You never saw them with blades. You know, my first training knife was a wooden Tonto because you know what? They were easily accessible and they weren't too expensive. So we made do. And there was a company out of Pittsburgh that was selling Filipino trainers, but the weights were off and they weren't all that good. I mean,
Big thing we did back in the day was we'd go to a dollar store and we'd buy a bunch of polymer cutting boards. And
there you go.
We'd sit down with a jigsaw and make a bunch of training knives.
Oh, there you go. Marky Doyle said he'd be honored. No, that'd be cool. You can arrange setting that up. Cool.
Yeah. When Bud K came along and started selling all these super cheap knockoff knives for super cheap, we'd buy them in bulk and then sit there in front of a belt sander so we could have folding training knives. And you know,
right. One of my best training knives is that one of the guys just took it. It was a Columbia River knife, and it's actually what I carry. So before I think the first one that really did it of any quantity was Emerson, and I'm not saying others didn't do it. That had drones, but they were the ones that I first came across, and he did it for almost all of his blades.
Yeah,
but I mean, listen, this goes back to when we talk about, well, how come people didn't know this and that and the other thing? We predate the internet, the three of us. So and our training, you know, and like I said, Bikini Tertia back then, everyone was using sticks. No one was using swords. Once Bob Burgee did that, it opened up the door for everybody. Then we started doing polycarbonate and all this other stuff. I like polycarbonate because it's easier to maintain if there's burrs in it. But there's nothing like the glint of metal. And when someone puts a metal trainer against your throat, it's still not a good feeling.
There's a visceral response.
There it is. It's exactly, you know. But okay, here we go. First training blade for him was Deer Antler. Oh, there we go. And Carlos de Lavelle. Okay. Cool.
Like we used to use you broke a stick, a rattan stick, you cut it down and make a couple of nice round trainers.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it.
Yeah.
You get it blown out right in the middle if you were lucky, and you cut it off, and oh wow, now I've got a spotty dagger.
The gator back was definitely was the blade that everyone got. Because the nice thing is when I would do it, when I got some knives made, he'd give out like the low end gator back just to throw it out there with you. And then Carlos says, "Much respect, gentlemen." There we go.
Thank you, sir.
I think. I mean, once that happened, it changed our game significantly. Because I've always because listen, when a stick breaks, what is it? It becomes an ice pick or a screwdriver. It is not a blade. And I've said it time and time again. You know, yes, the two can interchange, but unless you've done training with something that resembles a blade, I can do blade work with my sticks because of the quantity of reps I pulled with an edge trainer. That being said, though, when it's a stick in my hand, motor memory kicks in. It's still a hammer, you know.
One of the things that I work very hard with my students on when we are using rattan is knuckle alignment. And this being the line that you're striking with, not only does it mimic when you're using a blade, because that's where the blade's going to sit in your hand, it also is the most biomechanically correct position to transfer the most power to whatever you're hitting. So it's kind of a best of both worlds when you start them off that this is your target line. instead of most people that want to hold it flat fisted.
I get you. Well, actually, it was I was at the Maya convention, and Jared Wahungi was there. He goes, "Yes, the second set of knuckles." I'm like, and I talk about it all the time. I said, put a ruler in your hand, put a paint stick. If you don't have a knife, put a paint stick, put anything. But when he said second set of knuckles, I'm like, that was the best thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
I'm like, dang. Mikey Doyle wants to know, what do you think about water buffalo horn?
It's beautiful, but it's a natural material and it'll break just like anything else. I mean, it's gorgeous. I've got a really nice grunting that sits on my wall. And the reason it sits on my wall is it's got a horn handle and I don't want to break it. When I'm doing cutting and stuff, I've got a really nice modern made one by J.W. Bensinger, who makes amazing knives and swords. He's up in Vermont. And he's the guy that does all my Bowie knives. And he's a old Salat player, actually. He just doesn't publicize that much. And it's not what he's known for. But it gives him a really good insight into blade making that a lot of people don't have.
Well, I like the blade makers that have trained with something where they feel had to try to use it, try to understand it. Really makes a difference, I think. So I'm right there with you. Yeah.
There's a couple people that I found that they got it right without knowing what they're doing, but they're few and far between.
Right.
You gotta swing it. You gotta, it's like all these. It's like I get all these calls because I run a martial arts school. Hey, we can consult for your business, and the first thing I say, have you ever worked in the business? No. Then I don't want to talk to you. See you later. Bye. You got to have skin in the game. Selling martial arts supplies. Do you do martial arts? No. Well, there's only so much I will deal with you. When I want stuff for me and my people, like stuff that's system based versus just the generic. I mean, listen, what do we wear in the night group classes? Well, we use a karate gi because they're cheap and inexpensive and easy accessible. In the summers, we do a fight shirt. We wear shorts or a gi pants. But when I want a stick, a sword, a this, or that, I want whoever's supplying it to me to have some knowledge about the tool, and I mean hands-on knowledge with whatever they're selling me. There's my rant. We rant a lot here, Brian. I mean, you fit right in.
Look, I've seen plenty of your shows, Tim.
And you're still here.
I was gonna say he doesn't turn it off, so I was like, okay.
I'm divorced. I've got nothing better to do.
Okay, so Brock from St. Mary's, Pennsylvania. I think everyone has a certain training age that edges square blade, or two of their gear bags. Okay, and they're two in their two gear bags. Ray and Mike. Well,
yeah.
Walmart discontinues knives. We buy them up and then turn them into trainers. Right. And then Mikey Doyle. That's one thing here. I enjoy working with it. I don't usually train with it. Figured I'd ask a few of my melee guys to swear. And okay, all right. There we go.
One of the things to say about that is that, yes, horn knives are beautiful, but if you're not constant on your maintenance of them and after use, they can become just as jagged as a metal trainer, and you can rip up your training partners. And while we like to go hard, I don't really like to send my students or my training partners home bloody.
Gotcha. Gotcha. All right, let's see what other comments here. No, actually, Mikey, this is the one the shows I listen to. Okay, well, no one's got taste. Why the hell would you listen to us?
We've all been hitting the head too much.
I'm thinking that's really the case, but the good thing is I absolutely agreed.
Nice.
We'll figure out which one. Tack compression and certain knives for full contact.
I love those. I'm a big fan of the Knock Hard Contact trainers. If you've never used those, they are.
Who just brought them in recently? We had Dean. You know what? Dean said he was going to try to stop in tonight.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, of course Dean would have brought them in. I mean, Randy and Knock, who make them, They are amok people, and Dean's an amok guy, so it's natural progression. I took I discovered them from an amok seminar. Ew. Years a number of years ago. I don't remember how long, but they have been a go-to staple in my bag. And one of the things I like about them is that you can spar really, really hard safely with nothing more than a pair of goggles on, yet they are stiff enough and hard enough that if you get hit by it, you pay a price, but you don't get injured. And you'll hear me mention that a lot, and it's one of the reasons I'm not like a big fan of padded sticks and all, is because I believe that failure should have a price, and pain is one of our best teachers.
Have you tried the Hit series from Action?
Yeah, I don't like them. Because I see the exact same mistakes made by people when whether the stick can hit hard or not. They get this illusion of safety from the padded stick. And almost every single fight, they lead with their head. They're diving in because they're not afraid of being hit. But, you use some light rattan that really, really stings and lights you up.
Right.
You tend not to lead with your head. But I also come from a very old school way of training where we beat the tar out of each other. There was it wasn't tappy about and I don't mean that in the Filipino tappy sense. What I mean,
I get what you're saying.
Yeah. We would, other than hitting each other in the head, which we would control because we didn't want to injure, the rest of the body was fair game. And, you got out there and you earned your stripes, literally.
I mean, I'm all about all the different variation. I mean, because I also have kids sparring, and and Dean got to see it, and Ty sees it on a regular basis. So I use the Action Flex Pros for the kids. The Hit series, I like them. We've done minimal, actually, at Ty's events. We've done no gear sparring, backyard sparring with them, and I got a couple finger shots, and it's like, oh, I haven't done this in a while. I'm usually geared up more. This backyard sparring, they are probably my favorite padded stick in the Hit series because I can block pretty solid with them. I will go minimal armor live stick, but even then, I still don't go too crazy because the person and I that trains that, we all still got to work the day after. And I'm
absolutely. And that's when I was a young man. 53 years old now. I still hard spar, but I'm not. My rule is this: I will hit you as hard as you want to be hit, and you tell me that by how hard you hit me.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
And you can show skill and still have the other person pay a price for screwing up without hurting each other.
Yep.
Without injuring each other. And well, it's just as an aside, since we're on ramblings, this is one of the big things that I believe about any kind of sparring or free fighting is that one of the biggest components is having trust in the people you're engaging in that activity with, and trust that they actually have your best interests at heart. And if they catch you, slacking, they're not going to injure you or punish you for it. You'll pay for it, but they're not going to, make it so that, you need to eat with a straw for the rest of your life.
My idea is that pain can be a good teacher, damage, not so much.
Yeah. Right. And honestly, we've all here sparred pretty hard, I assume. Some of the best feelings is the next day when you go, oh man, that was great.
Right. Feel alive.
Let's see what we got here. So Tim Dobson from Canada says hello. Right. Good evening, gentlemen.
Hey, Tim.
Hey, here we go. Dan Medina, listening on his drive home.
Awesome.
Nice.
And Renee's calling us a bunch of youngsters. I'm like,
oh, shut up, you little angry Spaniard.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think he was. I mean, I'm 59. I thought he was younger than us.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's like.
Yeah.
How old? Whatever. He's like in his 40s.
Yeah, he can think what he wants. Cool. So before the show, okay, so you mentioned some things before the show, but let's try to tie this in so we don't. Oh, and Chris Nally says hello.
Hey,
We love Chris. He's a good guy.
Chris is one of my brothers, man. He is from the original system that I am, Run Rock No, under BK Luke. He and I go back 20 some plus years. We both train Balintawak together when we get the chance to.
Okay. Nice.
He's a really good guy.
Are you on the? I know that's going to tie into this, but are you a Bobby Tabata lineage?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So here we go. Renee's comment. I'm 53, but 70 in injuries.
Oh,
so
okay. So Renee's the same age I am.
But he's living in Canada, so there's an exchange rate. So he's probably only 25. So,
yeah.
And then Tim, he's turning 60. Who's buying tomorrow?
Well, you are. You're the oldest.
Same person who bought. Yeah, there you go. Same person who bought for me last week when I turned 59. 30 years, Chris says. So
it's been 30 years, Chris.
Yeah, that's what he's saying right here.
Nice.
So let's get in. Let's go with a couple of the styles that you. So you gave us a little preview prior to the show of some of the things you're doing, but so when you look at your Calice Americano, what? So we've got the European style fighting from, say, influenced by the SCA, but there's nothing there.
Oh, there's a lot more to it than just the SCA. I've also represented the United States in Battle of the Nations. I was on the 2013 USA team. That's full contact steel fighting. It's almost no holds barred. There are very, very little rules.
So HEMA?
Yeah. It's the most. It is a very brutal form of HEMA. It's replicating 14th century foot tournaments, and you have once a year. There's basically the Olympics, the World Championship, whatever you want to call it, of it, and every country sends a team. It is it's incredibly. It is the most brutal sport I've ever participated in my life. The only thing that's not real is the sharpness of the weapons. The weapons are blunt steel. Sure. And, a mace is a mace, whether it's sharp or not. And a poleaxe will put you on the ground, whether it's sharp or not. It's pretty amazing. But all those things informed my Filipino martial arts. They have never completely taken it over. And, through all this time, and, I really didn't mention this, but when I discovered FMA, I immediately fell in love with it, and it became a lifelong passion.
Sure.
I mean, that's the thing I come back to constantly, and everything I do is informed by, my training in various Filipino martial arts. And I love it. I love the expression. I love the creativity. I love the strategies. I love the techniques. Love everything about it. However, what I don't like is the way a lot of people train it. I don't like the way a lot of things get overcomplicated when they should be relatively simple concepts and ideas applied. And I really don't like, and it's different with children. Please understand, I'm not talking about children, because children, you essentially have to spoon feed. But as an adult, if I say, okay, these are the proper mechanics for an angle one, and this is how you hit there. If you take 5 seconds of thought, you should be able to figure out how to hit somebody from here all the way down to the bottom of their leg with that exact same technique. I understand a lot of stuff is done for transfer of information and integrity of a system and a style. I get that. But at the same time, people seem to get so lost in that a lot of people forget the martial, and they end up just doing some kind of Filipino Morris dancing. And, if that brings them satisfaction, who am I to judge? But don't go out there and say, I am doing the greatest fighting thing in the world, when all you're doing is choreographed patterns and routines. And, those things have their place, and they develop attributes, and I'm all about that. But until you mix it up with somebody that is actually actively trying to strike you, you're not doing anything. And I believe sparring is such a huge part of truly making these things that we study into our own instead of just mimicking a teacher. And yeah, that's kind of my rant right there.
Nope.
Let's get caught up here. So
take
Dan says he's 70, feeling in his 50s, so he's trying to trump us. You can go right ahead.
Nice.
Chris said, I used to watch Bryan make his own armor and weapons.
Mhm.
Renee, when you get injured in HEMA, it's a hematoma. Oh my God.
Rarely. Actually, the most common injuries are chopped off fingers, broken legs, and arms.
And then
Yes,
hi
Rich.
Bryan Bernhardt. Okay. And then Renee.
Bohurt is the Eastern European name for the sport.
Okay.
And because it primarily came out of Eastern Europe, Russia and Ukraine, even though they're fighting right now, are basically the people that started this whole thing. And it's an amazing thing that could be like a show all in and of itself. And truthfully, if you're going to do that, and it's something you're ever interested in, just something strange, I can get you with some of the guys that were on the very first team that worked hand in hand with the people that set stuff up. I mean, I was just
keep that in mind.
I was just a guy that went out there and hit people and got hit. I didn't do any of the organizational stuff, because that's a huge thing, and they can answer all those questions and explain all the various different factions and how things split up over the years, and the different, because there are a couple of different leagues now.
Oh, is that like the Armored Combat League as well?
Yes,
Are they
yes.
part of that? I know people in that.
Yeah. Who? And I say that because I probably know them.
He's from Connecticut or New Hampshire. He was king a couple times in the SCA. His son's named Cat. Now it's just not coming to me.
Yeah, I know exactly who you're talking about. Runs Knights Hall.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
Yep.
Nice.
So Ty, is that a Garmin watch?
Oh no, it's just a Timex dumb watch because I can only have dumb watches, but it keeps track of pulse.
You must work at a place like I work.
Yeah.
There you go. Okay, Chris
I have a Timex dumb watch as well.
Yep.
There you go.
Yep. Keep track of steps and pulse, which is good.
We used to beat the hell out of each other back in our Kaju Kempo days.
Yep.
And then Mike, Bryan, did you ever do a Glima seminar?
I've played with it a couple of times, not enough to actually say that I did it. I didn't compete, I didn't train, but I've done wrestling in that fashion, and it's kind of fun. It's one of the closest things I would relate it to is like bacon style wrestling, which is getting the big point. Bacon style wrestling was a way to practice catch wrestling, but while standing and not injuring your opponents. And it was used by the military for a little while, because the ultimate goal is to get the other guy's feet off the ground, and that's a win. Okay. Not to throw them, because the assumption is you can get his feet off the ground, you can slam him.
Yeah. Okay. So let's see. Brock says he's a head of the fan of the hit series, and then Rich. Yes, the kit armor used can set up all the sect of the group one works with. Just small things I've tried to learn. Nothing serious. Okay, cool.
I remember in Texas, not only was SCA big, but eventually Amped Card. I don't know if you had played those guys very much. Yeah, we're also big.
At that time, there really weren't too many games in town.
Right.
So you had a couple of big umbrella organizations, and now you've got people that specialize in 5-year periods, and everything they do is perfect. Okay. And then you've got the SCA, which is, as far as medieval reenactment goes, but
right, but it's fun.
Yeah. But like every martial arts school, you've got the people that are the serious, dedicated martial students that eat, live, and breathe fighting, and then you've got the people that come to class and socialize, and
well, that's everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. I actually wrote a article for one of the immersion labs publications a while back on a comparison between SCA fighting and Filipino martial arts, and how there's this really weird convergent evolution, because sticks are sticks. So you're going to develop the same techniques that work. But it was a great proving ground. It was a great way to go out there and not just train against the same people that you fight in your school, because you just get better at fighting each other. You don't become a better fighter.
Yep, you get inbred.
Yeah.
Actually, I wanted to touch back, so we got kind of distracted. You started talking more about, what you sort of put all into your Calis Americano, but I wanted to get more of that, because I know, this touched on it, but your core of that is, I think you said, the Filipino love.
Yeah, and a lot of what I've done is, number one, I've completely removed numbering. I don't use a numbered system. We throw basically three kinds of blows. We throw forehands, backhands, and thrusts. Everything else is a variation of those.
Sure.
And you can throw a forehand at the head, you can throw forehand at the arm, you can throw forehand at the whatever, backhand. It doesn't matter. Right. From there, I use a very simple pattern to teach movement, and what I mean is body mechanics. And the way I explain it to my students is, this is a moving reticle. It's not, this is angle 1, this is angle 2, this is angle whatever. You can move this reticle around your opponent, and you can hit them from any of those mechanical ways in that target. And don't do a lot of disarms, mostly because I believe that unless you make a very, very specific study of it, or have spent a long time in a system like Balintawak, where they do a lot of disarming and have taken it to a extremely high level, the average person is, the average martial artist is not going to be able to accomplish those things in a realistic manner. However, focusing on good fundamentals and understanding that, with all the plethora of things out there, there are names out there, there are only two ways to block: tip up and tip down. That's it. You can call those blocks any names you want, but that's it. That's what they are. And you can get all caught up in angles. The closest I get to teaching angles is I simply say, look at the body as 4 quarters. You're going to be using typically your inside deflections on this quarter. Occasionally you're going to use a roof block or a tip down block, cross block, whatever. And it's a lot of sparring. It's a lot of functionalizing basics. One of the things I've said for years is, if you can't reliably hit somebody with an angle 1 that is resisting you, you don't need to be worrying about things like disarms. Cover that first. Cover, movement, footwork, distance, timing, rhythm, the cores, the universal principles of fighting, no matter what martial art you're studying. Focus on those. Add the other stuff later. And when you get to where you're competent on that, I can start leading you down some pathways and show you some stuff, and even direct you to some teachers who are way better at those things than I am.
Well, people always want the new good thing before they're really ready, and unfortunately that takes away from them doing the basics that they need to walk.
I mean, honestly, pulling off a slick disarm is cool, but to me, nothing is better than hitting somebody with an angle 1 or an angle 2 that they could not touch.
Right.
That is the sweetest thing.
Right.
Because then you beat them with footwork, you beat them with timing, you beat them with your range, and ideally you outthought them. And that's the best right there.
Nope, I totally get it. Yep, definitely agree. So is that the breadth, or what else do you want to do to describe? What else would you say would describe your Calis Americano? And then we'll get into some other arts too, I guess.
Yeah, sure. The other thing is, I do not train people to fight like me. I don't want that. It's bad. And it's like, I don't even like the title guru, because that implies a bunch of things.
Right.
I like coach, because that's what I see my job is, and I coach you to develop you, not make you a copycat of me.
Nice.
Because like I'm a 6 foot tall guy, but I have T-Rex arms. So I do things that I fight in ranges a lot of people find uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But my Largo or my Largo is most people's Medeo. I'm always in the pocket because of the reach of my arms.
Mm.
So playing Largo games out here and trying to snipe hands and stuff just is not going to work for me. But it might work for somebody else,
mm-hmm.
and I will work with them to develop that aspect.
Perfect.
Because I don't want clones. I want my students to be better fighters than me.
Yep. No, I think a good teacher, that's the first thing they think is I want my students to be better than me. It doesn't matter what you teach.
Right.
If you don't do that, you're getting worse.
Right. And you were degrading the whole thing.
Yep.
And here's the other thing behind Calis Americano. I'm an American. I'm a big white, now gray, but red-headed American.
Mm.
And I can learn Filipino culture, academically. I can even go over there and live for a number of years, and I can have lots of Filipino friends.
Mm.
But I'm never going to see it through the same lens they do.
Right.
And everything I see is through, my lens, my experience.
Mm-hmm.
And once I started getting away from, my mother system, and I started adding and changing and removing and coming to what my belief system is, so to say, that's when I was like, man, it's kind of doing a disservice to him if I'm calling it that and it's really not that.
Mm.
I was like, what am I doing? Because people say, well, what style is it? And, the crib Bruce Lee, it's more of a process than it is an art. And, I want to help people along that process of becoming the best fighter they can be. Mm-hmm. And, so it's very much an American melting pot, but the core foundations of it are in the ideas and the heart of the Filipino martial arts. But the other stuff I do.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, yeah. Well, the only thing when we started this, when we first came on, I was looking up because I wasn't sure. I couldn't remember if you had an Y in your name or an I. Sorry.
Yeah,
but anyway, I looked you up, and then I saw this video on that you were doing on the Medusa. So obviously that's something else you also do. But let's start with that.
All right. Well, what enthralled me about Medusa, and with Mike Raymond here, I'm happy to say that there's nothing new or surprising or remarkable about Medusa, except at how simple it is, and that these people, Mike and his son and Jason Schultz, who orchestrated the manual, they figured out the simplest way to teach somebody competency with an edged weapon in a short period of time. And there are people that don't have time to dedicate 10, 15 years to the Filipino martial arts to be able to defend themselves against a blade or to be able to use a blade to defend themselves. Medusa is a very combative approach to it. And ideally, I can take you and give you a 4-hour seminar with a good bit of resistance with some opponents and some safe trainers. And you will walk out of that seminar with a functional skill set that you can use the moment you leave. And that is important to me because in today's world where there's so much going on, where there's so much danger everywhere you turn, where every other weekend there's a new school shooting or an office shooting or something like that, people need to learn to fight, to have a simple template of violence that they can follow to save themselves and others. And I see that in Medusa. It's so easily applicable to everything. It has within it built-in checkpoints that allow the civilian to make a check for whether they should escalate the force or not, or if they've reached the stopping point. And I could take somebody like Becky from accounting, and I pick on her all the time. She has no idea, but suddenly that guy from sales freaks out and comes shooting up the office. she's going to panic because all the literature says run, hide, fight. It tells you to run out the building. It tells you to hide behind this or hide behind that, but it doesn't tell you how to fight. Occasionally, you'll find some literature that says grab anything and throw it at them. Try to attack in a group. But they have no plan. They have nothing to do. If, this hypothetical Becky attended a Medusa seminar, she now understands the process of applying violence to another human being in a direct, overwhelming way. And whether she's any good at it or not, in this case, it's not like she's going to be going up against a trained soldier. She's going up against somebody that had an emotional or mental break. And it severely increases her chances of survival and gives her a plan that she's not going to panic. She actually has something to do.
Let's get caught up here just real quick, and then I want to mention something about you just said about not a soldier. That's a very good point that I like talking about. So, do we say? Let me see. Boom. Sam Wolf says, "Sorry, I'm late." Raymond says, 6 foot. Damn, Seth. Rich says, "I love Pocket, even if I don't have T-Rex arms." Okay.
T-Rex arms, big head.
LaCava says hello from South Carolina, who's last week's guest. Kurt, bravo, great distinction. Rubber chicken salute as well. Chris Nally, Ren
Rakudo, the way of combining.
Okay, and then Carl out from Canada via Barbados says hello. So I don't say this to rub in anyone's face. I've been doing a lot of social media lately, and I've been doing a company that works with, and it puts out daily content. And it is crazy the comments I get, the quantity of people that assume the opponent is a trained combatant. So what do you? Okay, you've been there, done that. You're a Gen Xer like we are. You've traveled a lot, which means you probably got to see a lot of extra violence, whether you wanted to or not, just being the new guy in the environment, stuff of that nature. You've done the SCA stuff, you've done the martial arts stuff, but you probably got exposed to the real world just as much. You said you're
a police officer as well. So.
Law enforcement as well. So what percentage do you think of when someone's being attacked, what percentage do you think of them actually have any kind of martial training?
Very little. But that is changing. The advent of video games that are darn near battlefield simulations. You get past the actual mechanics of the gun and the operation of the weapon. Kids from a very young age are learning how to move, how to shoot, how to communicate, the difference between cover and concealment, and they're getting all of this from games.
Does that transfer over to hand-to-hand combatives?
Absolutely not. But when you're talking about the primary weapon used in the United States in these sorts of mass shootings is a semi-automatic rifle, or a semi-automatic pistol. They are coming at these things with a little bit more knowledge. And also the advent of mixed martial arts. People have a little bit more of an understanding than they did when we were kids. Let's face it. When you and I were 12 years old, we probably still believed that there was some guy out there that had the iron palm technique that could explode your heart. Maybe you could learn the snake system and be like that guy from the 5 Deadly Venoms, looking for that secret.
He was the good guy, though. I like Toad myself, but
Oh, Toad was great. That's one of that is one of the best movies from that time period. But our versions of what people thought the martial arts were and how actual violence is better, is more accurate now than it was when we were younger. So,
of course, the difference is, though, and this is where I think the big distinction we have to make is that, like, one of my posts, listen, 1% of the population actually trains martial arts. So I'm thinking about hand-to-hand combatives. I'm not talking about firearms. So I'm specifically talking about that. Guy goes, their parents, they teach them fighting. The parents are nowhere to be found. And I'm not trying to say that they're absent. I'm saying that they're working their asses off. We don't have the single income families like we used to. And like when we were kids, we had to learn this shit ourselves. I mean, we had real fights. We didn't fight on the internet. Today's kids are very proficient at fighting on the internet.
Behind the schoolyard, or
boom. And we worked it out. We also worked out to be not adults, little people.
Right.
We had to deal with all this shit. If you don't get along with this guy, you got to work that out one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
Today's kids, I just don't see, I mean, their parents bring them to me. We teach my kids some focus. We teach my kid how to protect himself. And I let them know first thing, obviously, this is a marathon, not a sprint. So, but I think people are maybe more willing to go hands-on than they used to, because you watch TV shows and music videos and stuff of that nature, and this thug life type mindset, it gets to be a little romanticized out there. But I don't necessarily think hand to hand, that they have the experience we had when we were younger.
Watch fights on YouTube.
Yeah.
And I do that constantly. I'm constantly looking at videos of what's going on out there right now, and every now and then I see something incredibly terrifying. Like just the other day, the thing that happened in New York with the lady walking down the street, guy walks up behind her with a belt, like a lasso, drops it over her neck, slams her to the ground. She's out like that and drags her between two cars so nobody accidentally passing by can really see what he's doing. Goes through all her stuff, and apparently they stopped the footage. Apparently he went further than just mugging her. And I mean, it's a horrible thing, but you need to be aware of what's going on in the world around you, violence-wise, and what are the trends that people are using to approach assault, these sorts of things, because if you know beforehand what's going on, you're in a much better position.
So what else we got? Ty, you got some questions here?
So you mentioned Medusa. Is there anything else that you're currently still also doing?
Well, I also teach Bowie knife, which is just kind of, it's been a long time hobby of mine as far as, among bladed weapons, one I felt particularly drawn to researching its actual use as opposed to, the legends of the Bowie. And it's a cultural icon and symbol of the United States. You think of a samurai sword, you think of Japan. You think of all sorts of things associated with that sword. Same thing, you see a cruciform sword, you think Crusaders, Knights of Europe, there's a whole bunch of stuff associated with that weapon. You think about the Bowie knife, and immediately you think of the Deep South, New Orleans, riverboat gamblers, Jim Bowie, Davy Crockett, the Alamo, all of that stuff in an instant from a symbol. So, it caught my fascination. And, Jim Keating is one of my biggest influences. He is an amazing man, an amazing teacher with a depth of knowledge like few I've ever met. And he, personally, he has influence on me in ways that, at looking at things. And he kind of showed me the path to really unlocking that universal that I've always been looking for.
Nice.
And for that, I am eternally grateful. I mean, sure. I would not be who I am today without his influence. So, and I just kind of dove headlong into it, and and at some point started teaching my findings. And as always, everything I teach, you have to go out there and spar and make sure it works. And one of the things I do that's unique with the Bowie knife and what I teach is I only teach things that are documentable. There's a lot of things you can assume. There are a lot of things that we can say, well, this probably happened. But what I try to do is I try to put things together from a very historical based perspective where this technique was described in this newspaper article, or in this penny dreadful, or from things from the time period. And there's not a lot. So but there is enough that if you coalesce it all together, you can get a good idea of how the Bowie knife was used combatively in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And it's the other thing is, it was such a narrow history between the advent of firearms, when a Bowie knife was a necessary, any large knife, because there were large knives before the Bowie knife. And I mean, the Bowie knife itself is just marketing. I mean, it's really all it is. And if you really look at the score at the Sandbar duel, while Jim Bowie may have survived, he thoroughly got his butt kicked. And just incredible stamina that he survived everything, all the wounds he took there. That being said, we have all this legendary stuff, but you study enough, you read enough, you can see how this stuff was most likely performed, and then you go out and you train it and you try to make it work, and lo and behold, it works. And it's also a really neat mind switch whenever I'm teaching Bowie knife, because it's very tempting to do FMA with a Bowie knife. They're a perfect match. I mean, it is a perfect weapon to do FMA with. But that's not how
I gotta step away for a minute, but let me just get these caught up. I got cold. I gotta get some cold medicine. The allergies are killing me right now. But Dean says hello everyone. He's
hey,
happy
Dean.
to be here.
What's up, Dean?
He goes, let me see. Best people of violence have zero training. What sector of population are you saying is more willing to go hands-on? Middle class, suburbia. Carl from Canada via Barbados. I like the topic. I speak about this with my students. I see a change from 1969 to now. It's more like BC, because Carl used to hang out with Moses, just for the record. Chris Nally, the Crisata and the Subhilt. Oh, do you know Peter Couch from Mr. Keating's group?
I know of him. I've read his
I
stuff.
came up through the same school. I was in there years before him, but we ended up going through the same Filipino Martial Art Academy. It was kind of cool, and we knew each other from other things. So when we kind of bumped into each other doing Arnie's, like, "Damn, what are you doing here?" I'm doing Arnie's. So am I. But last one, Carl's laughing. He thinks, because he knows how funny I am about him and Moses. Cool. I finished reading about Bowie and the Alamo feared weapon. So I'm gonna step off. I gotta get some decongestions here. And Tim Dobson, I have an affection for the K bar. Okay, so Ty, you know what to do. I'll be back. I'm listening. So Ty this is when Ty usually starts talking trash about me, but I can still hear everything.
All right, or encouraging the guests to do the same. So feel free to do that. No, the Bowie sounds really, really interesting. Actually, I'd love to catch some of that.
Yeah,
probably don't have any of that online, probably, do you?
I've got some stuff on my YouTube channel, just little bits and pieces. Okay. I do. I generally try to do 2 Bowie knife virtual seminars a year.
Oh, nice.
So I'll make sure that next time I do one, I'll reach out. I'll let you know.
That'd be great.
And as much as I kind of hate doing things virtually,
right?
It's kind of the way to get things out there and give people the opportunity to at least dip their toes in the water and start training.
Right. Start scratching the itch. You might have to, develop it much further, but at least,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, that would be cool. I'm actually serious. I picked up a really weird pseudo Bowie knife in the Philippines, actually, because they made lots of stuff and it was sharp and all that cool stuff. It's totally almost cosplay, but it felt good, and that's why I bought it.
Well, that's what matters,
right?
And when you look at the similarities between like a smaller bolo, or even some of the larger Bowie knives versus larger bolos, they're essentially the same knife with a few minor differences. And that, it's real easy to, do FMA with a Bowie knife or fight Bowie knife style, American large knife style with a, Bolo. So, like I said, Bowie is marketing.
Sure.
The sandbar duel, his name became attached with it, and everybody wanted a knife like Jim Bowie's.
So is there a general range, just since we're on this topic, is there a general range for the size and weight that would sort of fit a traditional Bowie?
Depends on who you ask, what time period, and who made it.
All right. Fair enough.
I mean, most of us have a vision in our mind of what a Bowie knife is, and usually it's something similar to this.
Right.
Long blade, heavy knife, sharpened clip point. Those are kind of the defining characteristics that most people would consider a Bowie knife. But then you look at James Black Bowie #1, which is a dedicated edge up fighter with a pistol grip handle. That looks nothing like this.
Right. Wow.
And it's very indicative of one of the things that I think is one of the bigger influences on Bowie knife is actually the small sword. Because of, if you just pick up a Bowie knife, you tend to think of it as a slashing weapon. But when you really look at the documentation from the time period, you see that it was used much more as a thrusting weapon. That, the point was what you did your business with. The blade was how you cut your way in to get that point in the other person.
Okay.
And, when you look at like the stuff that comes out of the Northeast, which is holding the Bowie knife backwards. And this was a very predominant style of use up along the Pennsylvania Canadian North border, all up there. And it all makes a ton of sense within context. But these things existed long before, Jim Bowie came along.
Sure.
So, like I said, it's marketing.
No, it's interesting. We'll have to pursue that some more later. But so you were about to go on, or did you want to?
Currently, my big focus, outside of teaching, just personal development, is I'm studying Piper, Western Piper methods with Dean Franco, and this is a very fascinating journey, comparing the different movement modalities between East and West, but also Africa, which is that kind of central. And all the interesting things that lead up to making it what it is. It's a fascinating study, and there's and honestly, I think if you're an FMA person and you really like to play with Engano and really work that whole deceptive angle, Piper's something you might want to look into, at least briefly, because whereas Medusa is very, very direct and, essentially sort of the, as I like to describe it, attacking the ambush. This is Piper is much more deceptive, and it's all about deceptive body movement and deceptive angling and stuff like that. So it's definitely a unique thing that, if you are interested in edge weapons at all, absolutely take a look at it. Just from an academic standpoint, at least. Did you get what you needed, Tim?
Yeah, I'm hoping this is going to clear up and I had to take care of the dog too. So, I usually, it's just, I hate the pollen. It's the worst time of the year for me. Hay fever sucks. Tim Dobson from Canada would like to know, what's the average length of a Bowie overall, handle and blade on average?
Again, good question. In what period? And what I mean by that is, in the beginning, they were really large. towards the Civil War, they became extremely large, as you can see in some of the Confederate D-Guard bowies. But the average bowie that the average gentleman would carry was, 7 to 10 inches, not really much bigger than a K-bar.
Overall, handle and blade together.
Think about this. This is something you're carrying every day, stuck in your sash.
Sure.
You're not. That's a gentleman in town. Somebody working out in the field. Somebody that's actually out on the range and pushing our manifest destiny forward. Out there in the wilderness. Yeah, you're going to want something much bigger because it's doing a lot of duty. It's not just a, self-defense tool. You look at the interesting side point. The majority of duels that are recorded with Bowie knives actually happened in Congress and in DC more than anywhere else in the country.
Okay.
I mean, Cassius Clay is one of my favorite characters in history, not the boxer, but the abolitionist. And he fought off people in Congress that were trying to assassinate him by pulling out his Bowie knife and chopping them to bits. And like he became so well known for it. And he even had somebody make him a spring-loaded shoulder holster, basically, for his Bowie knife. That as soon as he tugged on it, it kicked the knife out into his hand. I mean, pretty amazing stuff for the time, And by there, you kind of get an idea about how big it was, because that's something that you're wearing under your vest. So not the big monster buoys that we like to think about and fantasize about, but something about this big, frequently a little smaller.
Right.
Cool. Okay, let me see.
We've covered your prehistory. We've covered some thoughts on Calisto Americano. Covered your link with Medusa and what you're playing here with what you're working on with Piper now, and then also your interest in Bowie. Anything else, even if it's not martial arts, that sort of feeds into that?
I'm a huge history nerd. The study of martial arts is really the study of human history and the study of our conflict with each other. And so it's always fascinating to me to look at the way things our forefathers did versus how we do it now, and what has really changed other than the technology. We're the same happy hairless murder monkeys we were. We've just gotten better mechanically. One of the best arguments I ever heard is that the rifle is nothing but the natural evolution of the spear, which is the natural evolution of the knife.
I remember somebody talking about the bow the same way. Hey, I want to stab that guy way over there. Okay, let's do that.
Yeah, exactly. I want to stab you, but I want to stab you over there.
Right.
Now I want to stab you on the other hill. It's that progression.
We're just about giving. We're about giving.
Yeah, it's better to give than receive.
Oh yeah.
Especially when it comes to suppressive firepower.
There you go.
But I mean, a large part of my life is very much martial arts focused and centric. I have my day job, and I teach most nights of the week, whether I'm teaching at the school that's just down the street from me, or I'm doing private lessons with people here at my home or at their home, or I'm doing them virtually. And somewhere in there, I still find time for me to train, which is seems to get more difficult the more students you get. But I also have an open challenge that I've had for years that I've never had anybody take me up on it.
Open what?
Challenge.
I have an open challenge.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Several years ago on the internet, people were going around and they were talking about death matches and all this stuff. And I was just like, all right, let's do a life match. Here's the rules.
Nice.
We'll get together, we'll fight, we'll record it, we'll put it on the internet. And not only that, the winner has to buy the pizza and beer.
Perfect.
There you go.
That sounds very civilized.
You know, I think that's a wonderful thing.
Mhm.
You know, the best friends I've ever had in my life were made through the martial arts, beating each other up.
Yep. Well, you
And,
mentioned it earlier, right? There's a lot of trust built in there, and you got to
mhm.
have that. But there's an
Yep.
earned part of that that makes you bond.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, and so, you know, that's kind of me in a nutshell. You know, I am this amalgamation of edged weapon martial arts throughout the world, and you know, the lessons that I've learned and been able to make work. And now I'm trying to, you know, kind of pass them on and hopefully inspire some other people to, you know, take a higher view and not get so myopically focused on your chosen system. Look at everything else, and just as teachers, and this is one of the biggest reasons why you should cross train as much as you can. Again, in my opinion, is as teachers, one of our primary jobs is to get information to a student in a way they understand.
Mhm.
And the way that we learn, the way that was, you know, first taught to us might not work for that student. So as a responsible teacher, it is good to continue. I don't care if it's a beginning an FMA, you know, seminar
Mhm.
taught by, you know, somebody that, you know, if it's within my reach, I will go, not to learn new techniques, but to learn maybe a better or different way of teaching those techniques. So that then when I am working with a student and that student has problems, I go, why don't we try this drill? Maybe this will feel better for you. And this will get that point across.
Always looking for ways to make connections. So a friend of ours, you might know him, Jack Latour,
Mhm.
has the same thought. He's very interested in watching people teach because you know the ontology there is, you know, can open up doors or make connections that you might not have thought of yourself, and you can use that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Nice. No, in learning styles, or teaching styles, or learning styles, it's there's a lot of ways to look at that. I don't know if you heard of. There's a little test you can do to find out if you're, you know,
Yeah,
concrete
visual
or
learner,
abstract.
auditory learner,
Right, right.
gustatory, and kinetic.
I'm a concrete random, if that means anything to you, which is an unusual style, which means I have to try really hard to reach the cop friend of mine who's concrete sequential. It's pretty funny, but yes, you gotta make it work for them. It doesn't really matter what you want, how you want to teach. The reason why you want to teach means they're more important as far as what they can consume and what they can develop from.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, one of the things that, like, you know, if I could have my wish within the martial arts world, I want to destroy teachers that have ego. I want to destroy teachers that set their students up for failure. I want to destroy predatory teachers. And the only way I can do this realistically is to just go out there and be the best teacher I can be and give people a better option.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, hell, we bring in people all the time to our camps, and it's not about, it's an enrichment program for our people. And sometimes you see the same thing being taught with a different set of words that make a lot of sense. I mean, I remember doing, I was a Bondo instructor with Dr. G, and he talks about the angles of attack. And if it comes from the right, your right foot's in front. It comes from the left, your left foot's in front. And he goes, well, why do you do that, Tim? I'm like, well, greater torque, blah, 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 blah. Talked about the mechanics of this stuff. Like, we do the same thing, but we do it for safety cuts and hits. I'm like, oh, well, what does that mean? We're clearing the path for the weapon to travel. I'm like, bing. That was the best explanation I ever heard, because that's something that I can teach my kids. Why do we step this foot forward? Because if you don't, you're going to hit yourself with your weapon with the follow through striking. And I'm like, holy cow, this is great. And I've had a lot of those things. I'm hanging around a lot of different people out there, and it's all about how what they do can affect what I'm doing.
Mhm.
And Dan Medina, who chimed in just now. So first, let's go this. Challenge accepted, Seth, or challenge accepted. You had me at free pizza. So, Dan Medina, in your SCA time, do you also try FMA fencing circles? Now, Dan we do a disarm, our number 9 disarm, because running that
The old
number.
9, yeah.
So it's a thumb strip off of it, and we were talking, and he goes,
It's a low forehand.
Yeah, and he shows it to us, and or I showed him the thing. I'm like, oh, and he shows a different angle of entry. I'm like, and we know that with Remy, we know that he gave every angle a body part for memorization, and then every disarm had an angle for memorization as well. But you'd go back and do the same disarm of multiple angles attacks, or some of us did. If you watched him, you'd see he did that. And that was the one disarm we never really, with utilizing the thumb to pry the weapon out. It's the forearm strip, which is another disarm. And then Dan goes, "Oh, here you do it like this." I'm like, "God damn it, that's not my favorite disarm." And I show it all the time. But no, Dan, I'm not paying you for that, by the way. You gave it to us free of charge. So,
I call those duh moments. Yeah. Remy used to share a lot of those. Duh, I love duh moments because it's just a flash of light that will resonate.
Yep. So and Tim Dobson agrees, and just like I said, I love attending seminars because I just, I love hearing different ways of teaching stuff. And I'm like, I've had people my fan club, those fans, they're like, "Oh, you're changing the things for the art." I'm like, I'm not changing a goddamn thing. I'm listening to what the man says. He had a better way of saying it. It doesn't mean I've changed the art. I'm just using somebody else's words as an explanation because, well, let's think about it. If you learn from a Filipino from the islands, there's a good chance English was his 4th or 5th language. So they don't get it right, not speaking to us. So sometimes people can give us a better way of saying the shit. So, okay.
And one of the things I love about Mark Makita, I'm not sure if you're familiar with his work, but incredible teacher. And just let's not even talk about his martial skill. Just his ability to clearly transmit information is amazing. And his understanding of how to put these concepts of Filipino martial arts that are often obfuscated either by people not understanding what they're doing, just mimicking and it working because they're doing it right, or it's been lost behind so many layers of teachers where that guy who that original teacher who English was his 5th language really didn't get it across, and so these things get lost. And then you get into like some of the nightmare stuff of the 90s seminar circuit, like Huba being done like this, and things that completely remove any real use out of something that should be a very powerful, dynamic, explosive movement into your opponent and to take control of them. I did a video about it, a year or two ago, as I was just starting to get into, putting stuff out on social media, and it basically boiled down to, no, Huba doesn't suck. Your performance of it does.
And there you go.
Well, that's actually, sorry, now I'm going to rant because one of the things I always hate is people, I just learned this thing, I can't get it to work. You know what? It's not what you can't get to work is the technique. It's you can't get you to work it. Mm-hmm. You got to give that. You got to put in the real work now.
I mean, this is like this is a personal admission of mine. I am slowly coming around to thinking that there is more worth in studying disarms other than just eating up class time. For the vast majority of my personal experience, I have never met anybody that could pull off a disarm full speed, full time against a fully resisting, non-compliant partner. Except for two people. Mark Makita and Jim Keating. Those were the guys that really just made me go, okay, wait a minute. This is a me problem, not a technique problem. not a tactic pro. So, yeah, over the last several years, I've been, working on trying to make disarming a functional skill. And I'm going to shout out Mark Makita even more. His latest video series on disarming is incredible. And it gave me within the first, because it's a bunch of modules, but within the first hour and a half, I had 3 distinct aha moments that, I had missed, and just some little things that I had already figured out in other places, but hadn't made the connection to disarm specifically. And that was also kind of a moment of self-chastisement, because I realized that maybe I was looking at this through my own prejudice lens and not trying to be as objective as I try to be, normally. That I never made that connection because it reinforced my distaste. But and I'm not giving away any secrets here, but like one of the things I teach my students when going to defang the snake, don't aim for the hand, aim behind the hand. Because if you aim behind the hand, when they pull their hand back, one of 2 things is either going to happen. You're either going to hit the arm, which is going to do the same thing, or they're going to pull their hand into your strike, what you want. So you're good either way. Stop aiming directly for the hand. I never made that connection to disarms and, doing them counteroffensively and realizing that, if you just reach behind the hand, that's when you get the hand. Stop chasing after the damn hand.
Yeah, right.
And that was a moment. That was just one of those moments that I hadn't made a connection to. And I was like, I literally walked around my house, sound of one hand clapping.
Well, I think you said it right there, though. Chase. If you ever have to chase anything, you're already behind by definition. So if you chase was part of your understanding of the thing, you better think again. Right. So it's a good reminder. Absolutely. We all get stuck in those things.
Well, I also think a lot of times we watch our predecessors and we don't do non-compliant striking. Right. So, everyone makes fun of the karate guys throwing the reverse punch, leaving it out there. How is that any different than someone feeding a strike at Guru Dan and you leave it out there, or any other person?
I agree, and it's a horrible way to teach.
But now, as a stage, like I do it in three sections. First one's technical. I'll leave my stick out there and let them do the disarm so they understand the mechanics.
Right.
Then I'll swing and stop, which is the timing. And then I go, now I'm really going to swing at you realistically, maybe not hard or fast, but I'm not going to leave it out. The same thing with a jab. I throw a jab and leave it out there. No, that's not a real punch. And then automatically someone hits harder. I go, it's still not real. And they go to swing. Go, stop. You're going to hurt my hand because I usually don't have a focus mitt on. And I go, here, hold the hand for me. Boom. Okay. Now there's a real punch. It's not that it was hard. It's just that I reloaded. And who's going to stand out there? Now, that being said, I personally believe that the stick disarms, at least the way for modern is for us, are meant to be done unarmed. And we start the stick on stick, and we work through that. When we get timing, skill, and confidence, then what we do is we ditch the weapon, and they have it, and we don't. But that's against the untrained opponent who's willing to come at you versus 2 people armed who know there's consequence, so they don't commit enough.
Right.
A trained opponent, it's blunt force trauma. Simple as that. You smash the hand. Actually, I find the head of the radius of the ulna bone opens the hand up the best. But you hit. There's your disarms. Someone who doesn't worry about someone hitting them back are most likely to commit. I mean, like I put some disarms up. It's a 60-second video. Oh, what about the other hand? You guys are thinking this over way too much. It's a demonstration.
One of the things I learned very early in dealing with social media, and I was getting a lot of negative comments, a lot of the standard, armchair experts, and I'll admit it was starting to get to me. Right. But I didn't engage with them other than the occasional bit of smartassery.
Yeah.
But then one day I was scrolling and I saw a video of Bobby Tawada doing some stuff. And the exact same comments were under his. And I was like, if he's getting them,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that was like, I'm done. Whatever. Say whatever you want to say. In fact, say more negative stuff because you're getting me views.
Right.
And that's it. Like
Still
I
fans.
looked at my videos now, and they've blown up. I got one. Of course, it was clickbait, and it was, why are Filipino martial arts better than Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? Now, I will say, I'm specifically talking about Brazilian, where they made it just cuddling on the ground. And I've trained Brazil. I was the guy that brought Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to Buffalo, but within a week, I had 1.4 million views on my Facebook alone. And people don't understand. Like, all right, we look at all the comments completely. Like, all right, look where we're at. I'm looking at it right now. So there's 2,300 comments. Let's say they're all bad, and they're not. A lot of them are defending my point of view.
Mm-hmm.
I had 36,000 thumbs up. I mean, that tells you right now that 36. So listen, you know what? At the end of the day, there is no such thing as bad PR.
Yeah.
Although sometimes you don't want the PR you're getting. I get that. But the thing here is, it's just amazing. I like listening to PR or the nonsense. I mean, because it gives me better ways to articulate some things. People are always saying, you feed that one, what's stopping with throwing a punch? Well, I'll tell you what, the body has 9 natural weapons: hands, feet, knees, elbows, and the head. You put a weapon in your hand, they're down to 1, because they think, unless they're actively training to hit with that other hand, they're not going to do that. And that's why I tell my students, the modern day application of double weapons is to get your live hand to function.
I use like Sinwali. I use Sinwali drills for 99% teaching coordination between right and left hand for people that have no coordination. That's it. There is some combative application in there if you extrapolate.
Not as much, though.
No, not as much. But getting the ability to have somebody doing something with each hand separately, actions, that's the important thing from that drill.
Well, the sad thing is when people forget the whole thing. You said the word right there. Drill.
Right.
Drills build skills, and people forget. Listen, like we do sombrada drill, which is a bunch of combat techniques.
Mm-hmm.
The drill is not going to the finish. It's like doing a kata. Katas are drills. If you want to get good at punching and kicking, you don't do katas, you punch and kick. But you take your katas, you break down the bunkai, and then or break down the moves, and then you have your bunkai that tells you what you're doing. Same thing with a drill. And it's funny, I'll even get some of the guys, some of our friends who kind of annoy us at times. Oh, the guy could just cut here, right? This. You're right, he could, but that's not what we're practicing right now. We're doing coordination. We're going back and forth. We're doing this.
We're isolating one thing and working on that one thing.
There you go.
It's people.
Who just gave you a whole bunch of hearts there?
That's weird. I think he made the heart symbol, right?
Here, do that heart again. Do that heart again.
Do that again, yeah.
I did that.
Okay, I don't know.
Didn't work.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But I think we're actually hitting on a key problem with a lot of practitioners of modern martial art or modern practitioner of martial arts, and this is the drills become ends to themselves.
Right.
There is no actual progressive training to take those skills out of those drills and make them functional.
Yep.
And there are a lot of schools, there are a lot of teachers, and it doesn't matter what system it is, because the big schools are the big schools, and you have teachers that are very far out of the control of the heads of the schools, and you will see them just regurgitating the stuff they learned, and no progression, no growth, and no taking a student from drill to skill to actual use. And it's my solution to this is we drill and mimic to develop a mechanical understanding. From there, once you reach a certain level of competency in the performance of the drill, just forget about the drill. You don't need it anymore. Then we move into what I define as sparring. And sparring is, and I differentiate between sparring and free fighting. And this is one of the big differences between me and a lot of teachers. When you are sparring, if you are training with me, as the newer student, the less experienced student, you're learning a new technique. You've mastered, for lack of a better word, the drill to understand the mechanics of the technique. Then we move into sparring. And that's where I take a student or me or somebody who is better than you, can control the situation of the fight, and give you the opportunities to perform that skill. That, let's say it's a successful roof block to say a hit to the rib cage, here and here. Real simple kind of thing. The senior student is never going to fight harder than 10% the junior student's level, and never fight less than 10%. And it all depends on what we're trying to bring out in that sparring session and how we want them to, what skills we want to work on. If they're really aggressive and, they have that natural aggressive tendency in their movement and their fighting, but, they tend to fall under pressure when somebody's bringing it back at them, that's when you up at that 10%, you become more aggressive and force that student to adapt to that situation and develop those skills. Once you've reached a level of competency with that, with your basic core skills, your basic defense, your basic offense, a basic understanding of how to strike in combinations. Once you understand that, then we can move into free fighting, which is what most people consider sparring. Right. And it's just, we're going to spar for so many rounds. And, where's the person that hits the other the most or whatever. But it's that intermediate developing of skill in a very controlled, pressurized environment that I see a lot of people are missing in their development. Another one of my mini rants.
No, that's good. Well, I mean, I think I agree. So for me, I totally resonate with that, because there is that middle ground where you want to put some challenge into the movements and and especially the skills you're developing, but you want to do it controlled so it can progress, right? Because if it's just a gotcha game, people tend to do what they're going to do in a gotcha game.
Right. And we want to avoid the gotcha game. And the big thing that I like about this, especially, with students, senior students and junior students, is that it's also a lesson to the junior student on how to control an opponent.
Nice.
And to bring about the results that you want in that opponent. Personal philosophy, I'm not big on fakes. They're interesting, but I look at it purely mathematically. Right. If I fake it your head and you don't buy it, and I've already moved on to something else, I've missed that opportunity to take your head off. Right. So what I have planned in, my little flow chart is I'm going to swing to take your head off. And if I hit it, great. But if you do block it, I'm going to move on to this open line over here because your stick is down here. It's that kind of thinking that,
I like the concept of aborts along those same lines. So I'm going to hit your head and I got an abort lined up.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And a lot of that is, weapons control, learning exactly when to commit to a strike, and learning actually where the power comes from in a strike, not just swinging with all your might along the line.
Right. Yep. No, I'm a big fan of power. So yeah, I actually agree. I mean, I don't like fakes. I like, if I'm going to hit you, I hit you. It's gonna land until I decide I don't want it to land. But until it's real until it's not. Right? If that makes sense.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
It's real until I have to go somewhere else, and I might start going somewhere else once I see you've committed to a block,
or if you look the wrong way.
Right.
Yep.
It's just a much more efficient way of fighting to me than wasting a lot of energy with a lot of jukes and look at my hand kind of stuff. Which is also part of the reason I'm finding Piper very fascinating in this study, is because it is very much about deception and something that I naturally dislike. So I think it would be good if I got better at it.
is it deception in terms of fakes, or is it deception like? So I remember I have a kung fu background. So drunken kung fu is known for its deception, but it's not really a fake. It's all of these things that you don't think they can do because of where they're at and the timing and stuff like that.
It is, to say deception, it covers a lot of things. It's a lot of broken rhythm. It's a lot of moving the knife in ways that are very unfamiliar to most bladed weapon systems. There is a lot of distraction. I would even go so far as to say that in some places there are practitioners that are adding sleight of hand into it, so you're never sure which hand the blade is in. But we're not talking like West Side Story, tossing it back and forth. No, not
Right.
stuff like that. But a real common one in using this Sharpie is this change right here, where you're moving it from a hand to hand in this passing sort of way.
Right.
And a lot of times it'll be done in the reverse, where the knife is presented and then you're struck with the other hand while you're sitting. So it's all sorts of really kind of cool stuff like that from a completely different culture.
I'm glad you said deception, because to me, distraction. To me, distraction is not a fake, right? In the same sense. Yeah. So distraction can be, actually, I'm looking someplace where I'm not going. That could be a distraction.
Yeah,
but sleight of hand, that would fit too. No, that's interesting. That's a good point.
Put it in line with like Tabata Balintawak, and you know how Bobby's always doing these little flicks around hitting you on the back side of the arm.
Right.
That's a distraction, because if it were real, the next shot's coming here and cracking your head open.
Yep.
Deceptions can be lots of things, and distractions can be lots of things.
Yep. Misdirection, Mike Raymond says. Yep.
Yeah, misdirection. That's night, Chris.
Yeah, Chris left a while ago, and then Eric Morgan's in, which is nice. I guess he just got out of class.
The gym, probably.
The gym.
We got any more questions?
I think.
Well, we forgot to ask for questions from the viewers, but they've been pretty interactive. But no questions.
Last round for questions. In the meantime, what do you have coming up?
Yes.
I've got a seminar coming up in Atlanta the same weekend as Blade Show. So if you're going to the Blade Show and you want to get some interesting training, come on out there. It will be Bill McGrath, myself, Dean Franco, and one other person who, forgive me, I don't remember his name at the moment. But if you go to the Pakiti Tertia International page and look under seminars, all the information's there.
I saw the flyer. Looks nice.
This is a physical in-person seminar, correct?
Yes, this is a physical in-person seminar. And we're going to be covering small knife and improvised weapons use from several different perspectives. Tuhan Bill is going to be doing things in the PTK fashion, as would be expected. I'm going to be doing things using the Medusa platform. Dean Franco is going to be doing things using the Piper platform. Nice. And the fourth gentleman is going to be doing he's very eclectic in what he's presenting, so I'm not exactly sure, but he's coming at the same small knife, improvised weapon, flashlight, pen, pocket stick, yada yada yada. And it will be a really good opportunity to get some hands-on training and see multiple viewpoints and multiple paths to answer the same question.
Nice.
So I'm really looking forward to that.
All right, let me see. Tim Dobson, one of my kukri instructors has some hidden hand changes. I be yet to master them, but they are functional.
Yeah, and a lot of those things are functional. But the question that always arises, is it worth the risk?
Right.
Is it worth the risk of losing it?
Right.
I mean, it is good to train those things. Don't get me wrong. It's good to, if you're a firearms guy, it's really great to train all those headshots. But when the money comes down to it, you shoot center mass, because that's your highest percentage chance.
I love training all the different knife manipulations for increasing my coordination, but When I got a knife in my hand, it's front grip.
Mhm.
Now, I do back grip when it's concealment. It's about hiding the blade for me. And there's been a couple occasions where I've deployed and I worked in a rough area and someone came in the back door that were supposed to come out the front, and one of our cashiers had a gun put in her belly. So, you know, everything was everyone's radar was up, and someone went in through the wrong door and getting ready to stab somebody. It turns out it was one of the employees who was able to hide it. But once again, you don't want to walk around with a knife in your hand so everyone sees you're doing this stuff. Of course, it was before hours, so there's the other part of it. As everyone expects me walking around in middle afternoon with a knife in my hand. But you know, exactly. But I want to know if a tool ends up in the back grip, can I utilize it? Some people poo-poo it, but you cannot say that you pick something off the counter and it's not in the grip you want. Well, how do you use it if the person's on top of you? So I love all the extra stuff, but ultimately I'm that front grip kind of guy. Of course, I've got a picture of Dean here hanging out with the knife in the back grip just as we speak about this. The algorithms are always listening to us, whether we agree to it or not. So, all right. So I don't have any other questions here. You have a Instagram page?
Yeah, you can find me at Southern Kalis. That's Kalis. Like the sword. You can find me on Instagram on that, or Bryan Cannata on Facebook. Reach out to me to either of those if you want to get in contact.
And if you forget, talk to Ty and I. We can hook you up. It's not a big deal. I mean, it's easy to,
or just keep watching his show. I'm sure Brian will be online as well.
He'll be there.
At some point I'll be in the chats.
That'd be great.
Yeah. All right. Well, is that everything, Ty? We covered everything.
I think we were good. I think Brian
did a good show. We got that was a long. I mean, that was not long. That was a lot of material back to back to back. That was really good information.
I think you knocked it out of the park, Brian.
Well, you guys helped.
Okay, well, we'll take the credit for that.
There you go.
All right. Well, listen, if you could just hold on a moment, we'll put you in the back room, and then we'll just do our follow up afterwards. Once again, Bryan Cannata, and another great show. Cheers, great. Yep, thank you. And
it's been a pleasure being on with you guys.
All right, we'll be with you just in a minute here.
Yeah, sure.
All right. Ty, what do you got coming up?
Oh gosh, I don't even know. Ask me again next week.
Okay. So for those on any of our West Coasters, I leave Wednesday for Sacramento. I'll be flying through San Francisco. I'll be teaching at the Dave Kovar conference, the ProMac conference that they have. And cheers, thank you. So if anyone wants to meet up while I'm out there, let me know. It's not a 24/7 event, so I've got ample time to hang out and shoot the bull or whatever. I'm going to be meeting up with Miguel Ruby for a little bit over at his school. He's like,
big hug from me.
Yeah, I will. It was like, God damn it, Hartman. What? I go, I'm going down to see Doug Marqueta in LA. Oh, that's funny. And so it's the same weekend. So two Western New Yorkers. He's like an hour from here. We're both teaching in California. He's got SoCal. He can have it. It's LA. I don't want that. I got North Cal covered, and we're both teaching Filipino martial arts. Boom.
Nice.
But that's that. A lot of things going to be coming down the pike. Our next big event is going to be the CELAC camp in July. I do have another hybrid event coming up June 8th. Physical and virtual seminar on another Balintawak topic, all the bits and pieces now that fill in the cracks. And then of course we have our camp in October, and there's a whole bunch of things. Chad Doolin's doing his camp soon.
Yep, last weekend in June, and
that'll be in Delaware.
Yep, Hocus in Delaware.
Yeah, and then if there's any questions, worldmodernarnese.com or World Modern Arnese Alliance or WM Arnese or worldmodernarnese.com. As always, if you got any questions, just let us know. Any suggestions for guests or topics, I have no clue on what next week time. We'll probably talk about the event, and I'll have something written up just as a backup.
Yeah.
So I mean, more and more people are having our guys showing up, so that's good. All right, so we'll get into this, and then we'll go from there. So, as always, this is a pleasure for me to hang out with one of my best buds out here, talking martial arts, and people putting up with us or putting up with me. He's an easy guy. I'm the hard guy. Good cop, bad cop. And having guests like Bryan is amazing. People that want to come on a show and share. And this I think show is one of our best shows. This is great because neither one of us really had a deep down knowledge about who was going to be on the show. He supported the show a bunch of times. I've heard good things, and boom, what a great show of huge variety of topics. What diversity here. So
I want to spend some more time with him, actually.
that'd be maybe he'll come back on again.
There you go. Or go visit.
There we go. Or go visit. All right. And Renee says second best show.
There you go.
Oh yeah, because he's gonna say the show that I was.
That's right, 58 or whatever it was.
Whatever it is. Actually, now they're four. Okay, there's 4 seasons, so each episode. So it's the number is like this is I think the 12th episode. So this is for season 4. So it's episode 412.
We're gonna stop at 15 seasons like Supernatural.
Yeah, but then we'll like a year later we'll do another season just because we spent all of our money.
There you go.
I don't know. All right. Well, listen, this is always a pleasure with me and my best bud here. So thank you as always. This is Dr. Tim.
PG Tye. Thanks, everyone.
And we'll see you all soon.